Hello, I'm Jerry Stone, and I run Spaceflight UK. I'm a freelance space presenter, and I've been giving talks about space and astronomy for over 50 years. I'm going to look at some of the main space activities taking place in 2021. Well, you wait 2 years for a spacecraft to arrive at Mars, and then 3 come along at once. All of them were launched last summer at the optimum time to launch to Mars, which occurs about every 26 months. The Emirates Mars mission is named HOPE. It's an orbiter that will study the Martian atmosphere. It's due to arrive in orbit around Mars on February the 9th, closely followed by a spacecraft from China, or rather 3 spacecraft, an orbiter, a lander, and a rover. And if the rover lands successfully on Mars, it'll make China the second country to do so after the USA. It's called Tianwen-1, which translates as Heavenly Questions. It was launched back in July and is due to enter orbit around Mars on February 10th. And it will then spend 2 to 3 months surveying potential sites to prepare for a landing in May. This is a quarter-size model of the rover, which is expected to probe the Martian surface with radar and to perform chemical analysis on the soil. This map shows the planned landing area in the Utopia Basin. It's close to the planned landing site of America's latest mission to the Red Planet, Mars 2020. The mission comprises of 2 craft. The main one is a rover called Perseverance. Its target is a crater named Jezero. Entry, descent and landing is due to take place on February 18th, and the process takes 7 minutes. At the time of landing, it will take more than 11 minutes to get a radio signal back from Mars. So by the time we hear that the spacecraft has entered the atmosphere, in reality it's already on the ground. And if anything goes wrong, there is nothing that anyone can do about it. That's why the period is known as the 7 minutes of terror. Seen from below, this view shows the fitting of an array of tubes that will hold samples of Martian soil that will be retrieved by a future mission. It also carries a plaque that commemorates the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and pays tribute to the perseverance of healthcare workers around the world. Something else being carried on the rover is a helicopter named Ingenuity. It's due to be deployed between 60 and 90 Martian days after the landing and will make up to 5 short test flights. If successful, Ingenuity will become the first craft to fly above the surface of another world. And when the craft lands on Mars, then so will I, as my name is on the spacecraft. And so is that of my granddaughter. This is an asteroid named Bennu, which has been orbited by a spacecraft named OSIRIS-REx since December 2018. In October 2020, it made a touch-and-go manoeuvre in which it scooped up some samples from the surface. In May, it's due to leave Bennu to begin its journey back home. It's scheduled to reach Earth in September 2023 with its cargo. NASA's next spacecraft to fly out beyond the asteroids is called Lucy. It's currently planned to launch in October or November. It will explore the Trojan asteroids, which are in 2 groups, located roughly 60 degrees ahead of Jupiter and 60 degrees behind it. They are remnants from the formation of the planets, and so will supply important clues to the earliest history of the solar system. NASA's other big launch around that time is due on the 31st of October, the James Webb Space Telescope. Often described as the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, JWST will observe in a lower frequency range, and their lower resolution requires a larger mirror. Here you can see just how big the mirror is. So big that even with a huge Ariane 5 rocket, it has to be folded up in order to fit inside the fairing. It's named after James Webb, a former head of NASA, seen here 60 years ago when President Kennedy presented a medal to Alan Shepard, the first American in space. This is a mock-up of China's new space station, scheduled for launch this spring. The in-orbit construction should be completed in 2022 after carrying out 11 flight missions this year and next. This year will see a significant step in America's return to the moon, with the first test flight of the new Space Launch System. At the base of the core module are 4 RS-25 engines that were used on the Space Shuttle. It also has 2 solid rocket boosters, like the shuttle, to provide the additional thrust needed at launch. Altogether, it will produce more thrust than the Saturn V. On top of the SLS will be the Orion Multi-Purpose Crew Vehicle, a conical spacecraft rather like Apollo, but with 50% more volume, and it's designed to be reused. Behind it is a service module provided by the European Space Agency. The first flight will be unmanned, and it will loop around the moon before returning to Earth. Orion is not the only American spacecraft to carry astronauts. This is the CST-100, developed by Boeing and known as Starliner. Last year it made an unmanned orbital flight test. Launched on an Atlas V rocket, it was intended to fly to the International Space Station, dock automatically, and stay for 8 days. But a software fault put the craft into an incorrect orbit. So the mission was reduced to 2 days, and Boeing announced that the second orbital flight test will be flown in order to fully test the craft. This is the second Starliner crew module being prepared for Orbital Flight Test 2. The flight is due to launch on 29th of March and will last between 7 and 14 days before returning to Earth in the desert of the western United States. On 3rd of February, NASA announced that Starliner's first manned flight, the Crew Flight Test, will take place no earlier than September this year. The flight will reuse the Starliner from the first orbital flight test. The crew will be Mike Fink, making his 4th flight, Barry Wilmore and Nicole Mann. The first operational flight is due to take place in December. Designated Starliner 1, it'll be the first of 6 crew rotation missions to the ISS. It'll be flown by NASA astronauts Sunita Williams, Josh Cassada and Jeanette Epps, with a JAXA astronaut, Koichi Wakata, likely to take the 4th place. This will be the first time that a woman has commanded the first operational flight of a new spacecraft, and Jeanette Epps will be the first black woman to fly to the ISS. Another new American spacecraft is the crew version of the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. This made its first flight with a crew last year, when it marked the first time since the retirement of the Space Shuttle in 2011 that an American crew had launched in an American craft from American soil, as commemorated in this patch. That flight, Demo Mission 2, was followed by the Crew Dragon's first operational flight, which launched on November 16th. The spacecraft, named Resilience, took its crew to spend 6 months on the space station, and they're expected to return to Earth in late April or early May. This marks the first operational mission of the Commercial Crew Program. However, later this year we'll see a quite extraordinary event in spaceflight, the first private orbital spaceflight. None of the 4 participants are career astronauts. The flight on a Crew Dragon craft has been contracted by billionaire Jared Isaacman in an effort to raise money for St Jude Children's Research Hospital. He will command the flight, which will make an automatic docking with the ISS. The crew will include an ambassador from the hospital and 2 others. You can see the image of a child in the mission patch. Another private company planning to fly people into space, specifically those who are not career astronauts, is Virgin Galactic. Spaceship Two can carry up to 6 passengers who will be able to float around the cabin for around 5 minutes of weightlessness before returning to Earth. I've actually sat in that seat, and for $250,000 you could take a ride. Those who have signed up include Tom Hanks, Angelina Jolie, Bill Gates, Michael Schumacher and Niki Lauda, and apparently Princess Beatrice. Last December saw the first of 3 final test flights, and the window for flying the next one opens on February 13th. Richard Branson plans to be on the final test flight, and after that, Virgin Galactic is hoping to fly its first customers this year. Watch this space. On April 12th, we'll all be celebrating the diamond anniversary of the first man in space. It'll be 60 years since Yuri Gagarin flew on Vostok 1, so this year will be special. To join in the celebrations, go to yurisnight.net. If you want to find out more about space exploration, contact me to order a copy of my latest book. Please don't buy it online, as I won't receive a penny and it won't be signed. Just drop me a line at jerry.stone2001@gmail.com for full details. And if you'd like a presentation on space for societies, schools or any kind of group, then contact me. Thank you.